Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be relent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a microlender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Today, I'm speaking to Nina Sossamon-Pogue. She has been a successful corporate executive, an Emmy award-winning news anchor, and a member of the U.S. gymnastics teams. Wow. She says that she is the result of the plot twist of her unique life story. As an author and speaker, she shares the highs and lows of life-changing events to inspire audiences to envision their futures in new ways. Nina, how are you?
I am great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Excellent. I am so excited to have you on. I've read your book. This is not the end. And it's really like breathtaking. It's like being on an adventure ride. And I just got so much from it. Let me ask you, because obviously just listening to your story as the audience is going to get a chance to understand as we talk about it, they'll be able to get the book and really get into your story. What has made you so successful? Obviously, because you've had to rewrite your life many times. What do you think is that thing that's made you so successful up to now?
Well, first, Gerald, thank you for reading the book. That's really kind of you. I think my success stems from being resilient. I didn't get to that word very quickly, but throughout my life, when I got to my 50s and had to kind of look back, and I started writing this book and digging into my research on why some people get stuck in bad chapters of their life and some people really thrive and do better, I got to this word resilience. And it's something you learn through life. And I think at a very early age, I had things become part of my life that made me resilient. And I think it's everything from being an athlete, falling down and having to get back up. And like in gymnastics, you literally fall down and get up and smile and keep going. And being coached and being coachable, to being on television and, constantly on and every day, picking apart the newscast and making it better and having to be resilient, adapt and change as the world around me changed. So there's something about that piece that's really become part of my success story.
Gotcha. And it's not a small feat to be on the U.S. gymnastics teams, especially as we're talking about this while the Olympics is going on in Paris, and we're seeing the hard work it takes to get there, even just to get on the team. Forget about winning a medal and other things. It's just an amazing feat to get to be one of those elite athletes, which means that to be on that team, that you were an elite athlete, which is amazing.
Be clear about it. I was on the U.S. team in a non-Olympic year. So I was on the U.S. team, traveled all over the world. And then, with Mary Lou Retton in that group, I was in with that group in the 80s. And then when it came time for the Olympics, like we saw during our own trials, and there's 10 or 20 girls who are fantastic. And then only a few get to go. So I didn't make it. I actually bombed. And back then, it only took one meet. I actually bombed in one of the meets leading up to the Olympics, one of the qualifiers. So, But I had traveled all over the world in the USA sweats before that. And certainly was a blow to my ego and a lot of shame, and too, as a teenager, to have that big failure as I saw it at that age. And now I can look back and see what all I accomplished and the things that the sport taught me and made me who I am. But back then it was just shame and blame and so embarrassed that I didn't make it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things that happens when we don't reach our goal the way we think we should reach it, right, is that we can turn the activity or the action of that, as you said, it was a failure or something happened, didn't work out right. Instead of that being a verb, we turn it into a noun.
Right.
And we start seeing ourselves as that thing. And whatever we believe and think is how we see the world. So then we start perceiving the world through this vision where it sounds like as you've gone through life, you've changed that now to a verb where it's like, okay, this didn't work or that didn't work, but it's just that situation. It's not me as a person.
Absolutely. And that narrative is so important in anybody's success. And, I have a framework for success, for resilience that I talk about. And one piece of that is this story, this narrative you say, and the words in your head come out of your mouth, and that becomes your story.
Exactly. It becomes the premise in which we see the world, and everything that happens to us is interpreted through that story.
Right. And the way in which we see the world and the way in which the world sees us, the people around us, our ecosystem, the way we are perceived to is partially through the language that we use to talk about ourselves and our surroundings. Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you this. I really want to just dive into the book.
Okay.
I'm
great.
jumping at the bed here. And I usually will ask my guests, what's your story? But I think as we go through these questions, your story is going to come out.
Okay.
Right. And so my first question is, in your book, This Is Not the End, you talk about overcoming life's toughest challenges. How do you believe personal resilience influences a person's productivity, both personally and professionally, irregardless of the setting or the challenge they may face? And maybe you can share one of your challenges that you shared in the book. So as we can begin to learn more about your story.
Yeah. So part of the productivity, as you know, is taking action. And, productivity is the actions that you take and how often you take them and how effective they are, and efficiently and effectively move your story forward, if you could say, or move your product forward, or move whatever you're doing forward. That's productivity. So as I see it in my head. So through some of these really big challenges in my life, let's take not making the U.S. team at the ripe old age of 16, 17 years old, thinking my life was over. That was a big piece of my life. And the productivity piece there was very much, what can I do with what I have, what's in front of me right now? Not how did I get here, looking in the past. I always say you kind of have to draw blinders on the moment in time that you're in. If you're really focused on the past, then that is where depression lives. Any good therapist will tell you that, And if you're so focused on the future and you're anxious about the what ifs and the doomsday scenarios, then that's where anxiety lives. So we have this, this happy place, this moment in time where we can actually focus on what we have to work with. And I think for me, the productivity in my life, my ability to take action and move forward was being able to be in that space and go, what do I have to work with right now? Because in that moment, for example, yes, I didn't make the U.S. team, but I had all this experience and talent and traveled the world. So that was part of who I was. And without thinking forward, like what do I want to be when I grow up, I knew in that moment, I go, something, I can get a college scholarship and I can go to college and take on this next chapter of my life. I still have these skills. I'm still in a space where I can do that. And to be able to switch gears and create the next chapter in your life fairly quickly. So it is sort of like the stages of grief. You have to get to that acceptance piece. That's how you get past the woulda, shoulda, couldas. You have to get that acceptance piece and go, okay, what do I have to work with right now?
Yeah.
And how do I move the ball forward?
Right.
Yeah.
And I loved in the book how, as you went through the various challenges and things that you went through in life, that later on you went back to your high school because they wanted to honor you. And what you thought was being in the minds of the people that you were in school with at the time was not what was in their minds at all. Can you share that a little bit?
Yeah, it's so silly. When you're a teenager and you go through something so big, I gave my whole life for this, which truly it felt like I'd spent my whole life in the gym. Then you don't make it. If you get a picture of a high school kid who, back then it was the announcements in the morning, everybody watch Nina this weekend. She'll be on World of Sports in Japan or something. And I was a weird kid that left school every day at noon. And so I was a gymnast. That's how I identified. And
Right.
so to come back into that, and I was just so embarrassed and all. And then all these years later, I had 3 kids at the time, and I was on my second marriage by the time I went back to my old high school and got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And there's a big plaque with my name on it on the wall. And people were so excited to see me, and they had remembered me, and they remembered what an amazing athlete I was, and my smile and my energy, and how excited I was in those years in the 80s. And I thought, all I can remember is like, embarrassed, sad Nina from high school. I just wanted to get it over with and get the hell out of there. So I was very much in my head thinking something very different about me. The people who I ran into were proud to know me and were excited about the success that I had. And I was a story they shared in their lives. Like, I had a girl I went to school with who, was on the US team. So very different than what I thought. And what was interesting was my children at the time came with me back to my high school, and I had never really talked about a lot of this. I mean, they knew Nina that was on TV and Nina that was a corporate executive. They didn't know Nina gymnastics life. I had packed all that up in, boxes, and it was in the attic at the time. I didn't want them to grow up in that shadow was part of it, but I'd moved on. So they were like, Mom, you were so cool. Like, you were like a thing. So really different from how I felt in the moment. I truly felt like a failure and embarrassed and full of shame. I mean, I remember those feelings of shame after I didn't make the team, and very different for the people around me. And to look back on it, I think I was in my 40s when I went back there, and to see very, very different.
Wow. Well, Willie Jolly is one of the top 5 speakers in the world. He has a quote that says, "When you're in the frame, you can't see the picture."
Oh, that's really good.
Right?
That's really good. I like that.
Frame, you can't see the picture, and you really need that outside input for people to kind of help you see, who are going to be honest with you, not just to kind of blow smoke and say, "Oh, you're great," and you're not. But if you really are at a different level and you're doing some amazing things, one piece of advice is to have people in your life who will help shine the mirror on you so you can see what's really going on in a positive light. Because again, if we have this story or narrative going on in our own minds, it's going to color how we see the world. And we may go through a whole chapter of our life thinking we were blowing it and bombing out when we really, in everybody else's eyes, was totally different.
Right. But I even did that later in life when I was working in television, and I did 3 shows a day for all those years in TV. And I always felt like I was like the worst mom ever, because I wasn't there to put my kids to bed and, all of the things. But to my kids, they're like, no, you're the coolest mom. And to the other women who I was jealous of in those multiple years, who dropped their kids off the carpool line and went and had coffees and played tennis and did other things, I've talked to them in more recent years. And they're like, oh, we were always so jealous because you had on a suit and you're getting ready to jump on a plane and go do a thing. And the grass is always greener. And it's really hard to see yourself through someone's eyes when you're just trying to survive. We're all going through our own struggles and just trying to get through it every day.
Exactly. So have someone that's going to give you input. So here's another question I have for you. Can you share a specific story or example from your book where either in your own life or someone else that you talk about in the book transform their lives and their mindset during a crisis? And obviously you share a number of things that you went through. So pick one of them and just share a little bit about yourself or a person that you were engaged with or involved with at that time, where they were going through a crisis and you watched them transform themselves, or you can share a personal one.
This is something that I see continuously, and people who read my book would get back to me and share these stories as well. And mindset is such a big part of it. And several come to mind. I think one of my own probably comes to mind, easiest to share that story. Yeah. I had an experience where I was let go from television. So here I went on a Thursday. I won Charleston's favorite news anchor for the 7th year in a row. And on that Friday, the GM of the TV station, I'm walking down to do a news brief. I'm in full hair and makeup to go do TV. And the GM of the news station stopped me. Actually, a woman from HR ran up to me in the hallway and said, hey, the GM wants to see you. And I was like, great. And I was thinking, he's going to give me a bonus. Like, this is going to be great. He's going to say thanks. Like, it was a big deal because it just came out in the newspaper the day before. And so I go walk into his office and I sit down, and the young girl from HR sits down too. And he says to me, Nina, we are releasing you from your contract without cause. And I said, excuse me? Like I was being let go in a nationwide layoff. They were letting me, it sounded like he practiced the sentence, but he
Right.
was letting me go. And so I went from this on top of the world in my own head of, invincible at the time to this moment in time. And I had,
Right.
3 young kids at home. I was the breadwinner at the time. I was in the middle of a lot of other things in my life. And I went from this mindset of it, and I had this, what I call a now what moment. Now what? And I didn't know
Yeah.
what to do in that moment.
Yeah.
I remember they handed me a little box of my stuff and ushered me out the door. I'd been with the TV station for 10 years at that time.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and I sat in the car for a while and went, I have on full makeup. I can't go out in the community. I don't want to go home. I have to sit there with the kids. Like I didn't know what to do. So my parents lived not far from there. And so I drove by and they weren't home. And I got a pair of my mom's sneakers because I was in heels from the bottom of her closet. Her shoe was half size smaller than me. And I crammed my feet in her little bitty shoes and her little bitty sneakers. And I walked up and down the beach for a long time. And in the time that I walked up and down the beach, I think it's one of the first times when in my head, I really switched mindsets very quickly. And I went from like this, my world is crumbling in this moment. What is happening?
Yeah.
I was also in the middle of a divorce at the time. I just felt like, okay, everything is happening at once. My world is crumbling. And I remember walking on that beach and going, wait, Nina. And I don't know where this comes to me. Maybe it's things that I've read on Stoicism. Maybe it's things that I've learned in the past. But in that moment, I went, I am the same person I was an hour ago before I knew this. And I had to really I had to like bolster myself up and go, I'm the same person that I was an hour before I did this. And what could be next? I think it's the first time in my life that I really, unlike other times when I had big failures and problems, I stayed in them for a long time of the what now. But I went
Right.
very quickly to imagining what the future could look like very quickly. And that mindset from this just happened to me. Why did they do this? What am I going to do? Money, worries, to
Right.
what could my life look like if I hadn't even thought about having a different life? I thought I was going to do this forever. Like
Right.
at that TV station, everybody loved Nina. Like, why would I ever leave? And in this moment of what would my life look like? By the time I finished that walk, I was like, they're going to pay me for 6 months. As long as I play nice and don't say that they let me go and we agreed to do this, because it looks bad to let somebody go. They're going to pay me for 6 months. I'm going to sit on this beach with my kids. I'd never had that kind of time with them. I'm going to think about what I love and make sure I build that into my future. It was just this mindset from, oh, woe's me. It was the fastest click that I ever had to get to that other one. That was my instance. And then years later, my kids are in college at this point, and this young guy comes home with my son. This is one other story I want to share on this because it's so true. And this kid comes home with my son, and he had just a really bad situation going on in college. And he was this cute sandy-haired boy, and he's, in I think his sophomore year of college, and he had gotten, really wasted at a party and made a fool of himself. I just edited there, fool of himself, and face planted on some steps, and his face was all scarred up, and his lip was busted, and he had made such an ass of himself. His friends, he was embarrassed to be around his friends. So he hadn't gone back to class. Right. And he's like, I just wasted, I've ruined my whole life. And my I haven't gone back to class. So my scores are tanking. My grades are tanking. I haven't told my parents because I'm too embarrassed. I ruined my life in one night. And I sat with him on the end of my dock. I'm like, baby, I didn't say baby to him. I didn't say anything. I wasn't being demeaning. I was like, hey, let's give it a beat here. I said, didn't you once say you wanted to have a dog when you grew up? And this cute, big old boy looked at me like I was crazy. And he's like, yeah, Miss Nina, I did. And I said, you did. I remember you saying you wanted to have a dog when you grew up. What kind of dog would you get? He goes, I think I'd get a lab, like some kind of big dog. And I was like, cool. And what would you name it? He's like, I don't know, like a people name, like George. And I was like, okay. So 5 years from now, when you and George are running down the beach and you're enjoying a day on the beach with George, this isn't going to feel like this. It's not going to feel like this. And so, and his face totally changed.
Yeah.
In that moment of, oh, like I could have my big old dog and, a big lab and running down the beach and it could be totally different. And that's the mindset shift. That is a shift in our own brains. We are living in our own heads, folks. So if you can get your head in the right space to move things forward, that's where productivity comes in, because you don't want to get stuck in that funk for too long. You know? Okay to not be okay, but not okay to stay that way.
Stuff's happen. Things happen, right?
Yeah.
Things happen, and they can happen fast.
Right. Right. And when it comes to mindset, that's a big part of it is how quickly can you change the way you're thinking? And one magical way for any of us to do that is to, play it forward in our head and go, okay, what is me? Picture me 5 years from now. What is me 5 years from now need me to do right now? Let me just do one thing that me 5 years from now is going to be proud of.
Right.
That's it.
Interviewed someone who came up with this concept called journaling forward, right? And he had been teaching it to his son, and his son had just grew and just was taking off and doing all these amazing things. And he wasn't using that same principle in his own life, right? The idea behind the journaling forward was to sit down every day and just journal of what do I want my day to look like? Not what my day is going to be, but what do I want it to look like? And then what do I want my week to look like? And what do I want my year to look like? And it's amazing because Einstein says, imagination is like greater than anything else, right? Greater than science and greater than anything else. Because that's how he figured a lot of things out, was through imagination. And many times when we're hit, we take a hit. And that's kind of what happens, right? You walk in,
right?
So, this is not working. We're going to let you go, blah, blah, blah. And it's happened to, most of us at one point in time in our lives that we've taken a hit. But it's stepping back and recalibrating, and that shift and that journaling, whether we write it out or we process it out. And I think when I think about you saying you're walking on the beach, it was like you were processing, right? You had time to reflect, and you started going, wait a minute, they're giving me 6 months of salary, and I'm going to be okay I got some money set aside, and okay, I can have some time away to spend with my kids that I've never done before. And I can begin to envision. And so all of a sudden, everything changed because your physiology changed, your neurochemistry changed, your mindset changed, your future changed.
Yeah. And that neurochemistry part is very real. You know that. Like, it's magic.
It really is. It really is. And so for many of us, or if you're going through something, if you're listening to this and you're going through something, you need to go take a walk. Just get outside and start thinking about the future. What do you want to see happen? And visualize that, and you will be amazed at what starts happening when you put your focus there and not on the hit you just took. Right?
Well, and so many of us, when we take these hits, life has a way of doing that for us, like making what I call throwing in a plot twist when it's needed. So many of us are busy with the doing that we don't take the time to go, hey, what do I want, or where am I headed? And I was in one of those places. I was busy with the doing and doing it well, but I hadn't really thought about what I wanted life to look like, or if I even had an opportunity or option to do something different. What did I want in my life? I'd never taken the time to really play it forward and envision it past, I got the anchor job. That was my goal. And I was doing it and winning awards. Like, that was cool. I had not thought past that. I was just in the mode of doing every day. Right. And sometimes when something big happens, if you get fired or you get injured or you get illness or a death in the family, something big happens to all of us. I call them your thises. That's why the name of the book is This Is Not the End, because your this is different from my this.
Yeah, right.
When this happens, when this happens, you sort of get a free pass to do a reset. No one looks at you like, you go through a divorce, or like, no one looks at you like, why are you doing this? You just get a free pass to rethink things. So take that pass. Take it. Do something.
Exactly.
Make your life what you want it to be. You get a chance to do a little restart.
To really recreate. Many of us have also gone through mental health challenges. Something bad happens and it psychologically wounds us, right? And we have to really recalibrate. And it's more than just taking a hit, because it really impacts us psychologically and mentally. It really comes after us. And you talk about some experiences like that in yourself and that others had in the book that were really significant. But you also lay out, as you were going through the process of dealing with real stuff that you developed some strategies, but you also had, I think at that point, you had been remarried, and new husband also had a psychology background.
Yeah. Who knew I needed that, right?
I think we all need somebody like that in
Yeah.
our life at different times. But he was able to kind of guide and counsel and even recommend. And sometimes you followed him, sometimes you didn't. And then other times you're like, "Ooh, I should have listened." Like when you didn't, you're like, "Ooh, I think I should have listened to that one." Because sometimes things happen and it's not a quick fix, no matter how many times you walk on the beach. And you got to really go and work hard to move forward. But those are the most rewarding things that can ever happen from the standpoint of who you become as you work through it. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So I always say when those are one of the major thises that takes your life in a new direction. Like
Yeah.
it's not going to be the same on the other side of it. And some of these traumatic experiences or devastating events in our lives that happen, some of these, we are very different on the other side. And there's a little bit of the letting go of the person that you were before, because
Yeah.
you don't get to go back. You can't undo. It's kind of like I always used to joke. Sometimes I'll joke, like when you walk in on somebody in the bathroom and you're like, "Oh, I didn't want to see that." Like you can't unsee it. Like it's in your head now. Yeah. So when something big happens, I just do that to make light of very serious situations. But when something big happens in your life, some traumatic event, and maybe you're going through one right now, like you wake up thinking about it, you go to bed thinking about it, it's all you think about. Like you're not going to a walk on the beach, like you said, it's not going to fix it.
Right.
You're not going to be the same again. So there is a grieving for the person that you were. There's a little bit of grieving that goes on with that because you never get to go back and be that person again. If you are carefree and happy and then something happens, you just don't get to go back to that. You are different. You're wired differently. Your brain is at a shock and it's wired differently. Your life experience has changed. And from that moment forward, you are different. It doesn't mean it has to be bad going forward. It's just going to be different. So in my situation, I went through an event that left me not wanting to go on. I had suicidal ideation. I was in a really bad spot. And I can look at it now. I was 37 at the time and say, these are the things that were going through my head. And these are the things that I had to do to move forward from this. And that's one that it was much more than a walk on a beach. That was a lot of therapy and a lot of work. And that's where I go back to that saying, whatever this is that you're going through, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And how long you stay in it is up to you, but it's just not okay to stay there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have you hold off and not tell that story because I really want people to get the book, to read it, and whether you listen to the book or you read it, because you're going to, as you listen to your story of what you went through, you're going to relive or think through things that you may have gone through or you may be going through. And as you kind of see, Nina go through this situation and how she handled it and what she learned from it, it's going to help you. Because that's how I felt as I was going through it. One of my big challenges that I had at one point, and I shared this on my first podcast, was in 2018. I had a major bout with vertigo that wiped out my vestibular system. I lost the ability to walk. Wow. It left me with a brain injury 6 weeks before my TEDx.
Oh, wow.
Now, I delivered my TEDx and I used music and the neuroscience of music, but it radically changed my life in so many different ways and so many different facets. And even as of today, my life is radically different. And I can't it's one of those situations where you can't go back and do a read. It's just different. But I would not be the person I am today. I wouldn't even be doing this podcast if I hadn't gone through that. And there's a reason it's called Productivity Smarts, because productivity to me is more than just getting a lot of stuff done and checking things off. It's about being whole. And it's about optimizing all of our resources, becoming the best us or you that you can become, even as you're working through stuff that you wouldn't want your enemy to go through.
Right.
And yet you can grow through it. You can change, you can be gracious, you can get better, not bitter. You can, just grow through the challenges and not just go through it. You can really go and become a different person at a whole nother level and a whole nother depth if you had not gone through it. And I know I've experienced that And obviously, I know in that particular story that I'm looking at you going like, yeah, I know the exact story you're talking about, but I don't want you to tell it because I want people to read about it.
Yeah, and it's hard. Yeah, and it's always a hard one to tell too, and it can be triggery. So that's always good. You can put down the book if you don't want to read the whole thing.
Exactly.
You said something that I'm really honored to hear. As you read my book, you looked at yourself. This book when I wrote it, and again, it came out in 2019. It's been out in the world for a while. I wrote it because it was the book I was looking for at the time. When I went through this moment, and I call it my "Don't Jump Off the Bridge" book. And I stood in the line in the aisle at Barnes and Noble back in the day. Remember those bookstores? We always used to ordered everything. But I remember standing in the bookstore and looking for some help way back in 2004 when I was going through this, 2005 when I was going through this, and I needed help. And there were big giant books on PTSD, and there were other people's stories about their traumas. And I was like, I am already in such a devastated, horrible place in my head. I can't take anybody else's story. So this book is really about you, the reader. And that's why I'm glad you said that, because it's not my story. It's all for you. And it's really just taking you. I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do. I just tell me some things to do to get to the other side of this. That's all that's all I want. I almost made that book, the name of it, called Get Past This, because that's kind of what I want. I just let me help you get past this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the way you started. It was like, this is not the end. And whatever this is for you, because you kind of reiterate that a lot in the beginning of the book. You really go into, I like the way you play on the word of you're in this. I have my this, but you're this, and so on. You. And again, I thought it was really well written, and the way you put it together.
Well, I like that you saw yourself in it, because that's exactly what was the goal. Yeah.
Exactly. So I have one last question, and I want to ask you, where can people learn about you? And that is, in our world today, things are moving really fast, right? We have AI that is just cranking out more content than anybody can consume in a lifetime in one day, right? We have more channels on television and more messages that are coming out. We have more social media platforms that are trying to shape how we see the world. Based on your insights of the things that you've gone through and the things that you've written in your book, This Is Not the End, what would you say are some effective ways to manage all of these distractions?
Yeah, and you can call it a distraction, but it's also, there's some good in it too. So I talk about this as this is the people part of my framework, the P and the people part. We have to edit the people in our life. So you can make lists of the people that you interact with every day, who's helping, who's hurting. You can put them on one side or the other, the villains and the heroes, like who's helping, who's hurting in your life. But then you also have all the other things that you're consuming and bringing into your world. So like this, you're an influence to some people. If they're taking their time to listen to you, this would be a good thing to put in your life. So that would be in the win column. But we have this responsibility to edit out what we're listening to and what we're letting into our world, and how much social media we consume, and how many of the comments, especially if you're out there and putting yourself out there, the things that people say about you, how we let them affect us. So there's so much more to edit it out now than there used to be. And it is a very new paradigm for all of us. Like this was never a thing before. This is having this much data and information and constant connectivity, and the and the advancements in technology that are constant. So much information and so much coming at us. We have a responsibility to edit our own people and edit your own influencers. And my husband likes to watch scary movies and other things, and I won't watch them at night. Or if I do watch one with him, afterwards I have to go and pull up baby goats. Lately, my thing's been baby goats. I'm like, I just need something happy in my head. But I will warn you, everybody listening, if you look at baby goats, the algorithm will show you baby goats all the time. But, they will feed you so many baby goat videos. So I choose to put something happy in my head before I, before I turn off my devices and start shutting down for the night. We have a responsibility in that. There's some really great content out there that you can choose to consume, and some really damaging content. And everyone can influence you. You have to choose who's going to be an influencer. There's a really great book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's one of my favorites. And I talk about it from the stage. And it's about how our brains and our neurochemistry works when we're as if a lion's chasing us across the savannah, and, all that, adrenaline and cortisol and norepinephrine that we need to focus and get our heart rate up and go. we live our lives like that a lot because we're always anxious. And I talk about, in this case, the zebra chases, the lion chases the zebra gets away, and then it's hiding in the bushes, and like heart rate's coming down, the vision is widening. It's like, okay, I'm okay. And then in my scenario, my zebra, in a very human capacity, pulls out his cell phone to see what the rest of the animal kingdom is up to. And then he sees flamingo on the beach, and he's like, flamingos on the beach. He just outran a friggin' lion and should be so proud of himself because he's a really great zebra and he's built for the savannah. But he looks at flamingo on the beach. He's like, oh, wish I was pink. I want to be pink. I'm sick of these stripes. I want to go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. So we do this to ourselves. No matter how great we are at stuff,
yes,
no matter what a great zebra we are, we like look at our phone and compare ourselves. Comparison is the thief of joy. We compare ourselves to others. And that is a new phenomenon. It's out there and it's everywhere. Social media is so dangerous in that way. The other piece of the social media part that I'll share before I give it back to you. Sorry, I'm hogging this moment, but I love this subject. I think that there's a level of public pain that wasn't there anymore. So no one has private lives anymore. Our failures are out there, and we talk about them. When you lose your job or something, you have to change it on LinkedIn. You have to, our failures are out there for everybody to see. And so my lifetime of very public successes and failures has given me a different perspective on that, because I had that all happening before social media, and now with social media, everything is public. So handling the scrutiny and the self-thoughts around public, how we handle our, the self-sabotage we can do when we go through something with everyone watching is very different than it was. And it wasn't a thing. Not everybody was a public person years ago, but everybody's wins and losses are very public now.
Exactly. We definitely have to be careful, and we have to edit out, like you said, we have to look at, across work, family, friends, and everything else. Who should I listen to and who should I limit? Because there may be situations where you have to see them, family on at times, and they may not be the most positive people. And you have to go, okay, I have to limit the influence of that person in my life. I don't love them less, but I just have to protect myself from that negative influence. But then, we have to do that across the board and make sure that we're taking in the positive influences that we need. And you're so right that things are different now from the standpoint of, even if you're changing your job on LinkedIn, it's like, oh, why did you change your job? Why did you make that update? Oh, you gave that podcast or you did that speech. And then some people will love it, and some people may say, oh, well, they're doing this and they're doing that. So all of it is just like so open, and you feel vulnerable because of that. But then you constantly have to journal forward, if you will, and really establish who you are, where you're going, and kind of put somewhat blinders on for where you want to go, but at the same time be aware of their surroundings, kind of like the zebra, right?
Yeah,
I've heard of that book.
It's such a good book. It's a little heavy read, a lot of science in it, but it's so fun to think about how our bodies are reacting to the ways in which we're thinking. Yeah, but the whole idea of the next chapter, like you were saying, you're writing your own book. Like no one's more in charge of your story than you are. And so you are figuring out what the next chapter is going to look like, and the people in it, and the words you use, and the places that you go. Sometimes I'll joke from the stage and I'll point out somebody and say, hey, and they'll usually, I try to pick somebody who's really like buttoned up in a suit and straight laced and paying close attention. And I'll say, are you good at your job? And they'll say, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, you could decide tomorrow, like you're sick of this whole thing and you just want to like get a face tat and dye your hair purple and get a Harley and drive across the country, and the look on their faces are, what? And I'm like, it's your life. You could totally go off the rails tomorrow. Like, you're in more control of your life than not your spouse, not who's the president, not your boss. You're in control of don't do that. That's a really bad idea. Pull in some other people and get some feedback. That's the people part. But you're in control of your life. And if it's not working, it's up to you to fix it. No, people always say no one's coming to help. When you were saying, what does the future look like? And keep writing, journal forward. Imagine something if you want to, or like people call it manifesting or setting goals or wherever. Put something out there, and kind of once it's in your head, you can't unsee that either. Like once the thought's out there, you will start going in that direction if it's something you really want.
Exactly. Well, Nina, this has been such an honor to speak with you. I love your book. I've gotten so much from it, from going through it and listening to all your stories and the things that happen. And man, what strength you have, the challenges you've gone through, but what strength you have as you've reinvented yourself over and over again. And you would be someone I would say is the quintessential productivity smarts person, because you've just really, and again, it's not just about doing a lot of stuff. It's about who do you become and how do you reinvent as you go through life's challenges. So I really appreciate you for sharing your insight, wisdom, and putting those vulnerable discussions in the book that I hope the readers will go out and listen to and read and really follow that journey and take a look at it. If people want to get to know you or learn more about you or work with you, where can they go?
Well, thanks for those very kind words, Gerald. You can find me on all the social medias, obviously, in Facebook and on LinkedIn. If you're interested in me speaking at a conference or something, LinkedIn's the easiest way to find me. But also on Instagram, I put out some daily inspirational and motivational thoughts and just thought-provoking things that I put in for folks to follow along and keep you, in the game and in the mental health, in the mental space that you need to be in daily. I think I'm hilarious, so I also put some funny stuff out there because not everybody thinks I'm funny, but I do.
Right.
So yeah. So on Nina Speaks, and it's Nina Speaks on Instagram is probably the best place to jump in and follow me, or on Nina Sossamon-Pogue on Facebook, or through LinkedIn as well. Yeah, and you can find my book anywhere where you find books.
Yeah. Well, Nina, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was really honored to have you on the show.
Thanks, Gerald. It's an honor to be here. It's been so much fun talking to you. You're easy to talk. This was really a pleasure. So thank you for having me on.
Excellent.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.